Welcome to Goldfish on Games, where today we're answering the question, how do you follow up one of the most popular games of all time? Well, you follow its science victory, go into space and visit Alpha Centauri. Sid Meier's Alpha Centauri was made by Firaxis Games and published by EA in 1999. Inside the flap of this foldgate box are the various in-game factions, who we will get to know in much more detail during the video. The back of the box boasts about some of what we can look forward to: unit customization, terraforming, diplomacy, and infinite replayability. Being an EA box, the specs can be found at the top, with it playing on anything above a Pentium 133 with 16MB of RAM and a 60MB hard drive. And inside the box we get a 200-page manual that is packed with backstory, guides on just about every aspect of the game, and then detailed appendices at the back that go into everything in amazing detail. Also included is this massive fold-out poster that shows the huge and detailed tech tree in the game. And finally, what feels like a bit of an anticlimax after that poster, we get the game on a single CD. The game opens up with this very dramatic intro that I've been skipping over for the last 20 years, as I've had this installed on just about every computer I've ever owned. And once in the main menu, we can start a game, start a quick game, load a save, set up multiplayer. What you won't find though is much in the way of options. The scenarios is an area that I've not really messed around with that much, as it only comes with a few, and I'd rather just play a full game than these limited objective based missions. Quick start is useful if you play the game a lot, as it will start a brand new game with the settings of the previous one. So this means that start game is where, well, most will start the game. And here you can either go with a few predefined maps of planet. Yes, they named the planet Planet. They must have had Columbo come up with that name. But a customized game is where I would normally start. Being able to set the size of planet and then randomizing the world means that things are always different. We also get asked a few questions that will help shape how the world is created, and notice how the background changes with your selections. It's those little touches that just keep me coming back. It's also great that you can edit the rules of the game. There aren't a lot of them, but it is enough to make a huge difference. And after picking your difficulty level, it's then on to selecting which faction you're going to play as. But we won't go into them just yet, as I feel we need a little bit more context from the game to really understand them. So after randomly selecting one, our pod will crash on planet and we're ready to play. If you played a 4X strategy game before, then this will all be quite familiar. But if not, then this is a game that combines exploration, expansion, exploiting, and exterminating. And that is to grow your base while expanding your territory by founding new bases, all while researching new technology, generating resources, and creating an army. This, like all good 4X games, is turn-based, though some of those turns can last quite a while when there's a lot going on. The strategy comes from what you prioritize and what and where you build. Because you aren't alone on planet. Those other 6 factions are there and they've taken their grudges with them. Also lurking around are the Mind Worms, a parasitic entity that psychically attacks its victims before burrowing inside their heads to eat them from the inside out. These are the game's equivalent to the Barbarians, and they will attack unit, bases, and anything else that they might get close to. And they're not just limited to ground either, as they can fly and attack from sea. You start the game with just a single base, a bit of research that's relevant to your faction, and if you're lucky, a unit as well. And that's it on this hostile world. As we're going to be spending a bit of time on the map, I think it's fine if we tweak one of the settings in the ini file, as with this one small trick we can get a wider appreciation of the game. It's not perfect, as you can see the UI is still 4x3, and some of the other bits of the game might show up a bit weirdly, but it is great that such a simple change can make things so much better. This is where we all move our units around and give them orders. It might be as simple as dragging a line where you want the unit to go to, or you might use the context menu to give it something more detailed, like go and explore. Almost everything has a keyboard shortcut, so you can get very quick with your orders once you've learnt them all. Some of the tiles will also have additional icons on them. These can range from objects that you can interact with, the native plant life that can be both useful and a pain, or it could indicate additional resources that you can use. But to understand what the resources do, I think we need to look into a base in more detail. On entering a city base, you can't help but notice there's a huge amount of information that is on offer here. So I'll give you the basics. The window in the middle shows the state of the base, including which squares you're currently using and what facilities you've built. You can utilise as many squares as workers that you have, and moving workers around can help you aim the base in the direction that you need them. If you want it to grow faster, then having surplus nutrients will help. Want to build quicker, then having more minerals is the way to go. And energy is used as your cash, so having bases produce more energy than they need will help your coffers grow. This can all get a little bit too much when you have lots of bases, so you can let the governor take over, as you can tell it what it can and can't do, and then you can give it a general idea of what direction you want him to take, and then just let it go. This can include building base upgrades as well as units. Or you can do that manually from the build queue, from support units to base upgrades to adding to your army. And with one of the banner features being the vehicle customization, let's take a look at that while we're here, as it is very cool. Your first step normally is to select what chassis you want. This can range from simple troops to cars to hover tanks and aircraft. Then on top of these you can apply different equipment, shields and reactors. Equipment includes various weapons, but also parts like formers and colony pods. Shields give you more defensive power, and they act similar to the weapons, that each new one is better than the last, but there are also special ones that can help you with those worms. Reactors provide the health of the unit, so a larger reactor allows the unit to last longer, but it also costs much more to build and support. As units have an upkeep cost, as you have to keep them supplied. Those last two blocks are for applying modifiers. This might be adding anti-air abilities so they can take on aircraft, or drop pods so they can be deployed anywhere on the map. But one of my favourites is the clean reactor, because that means they don't have an upkeep cost. The special equipment tends to make a unique looking unit, and these are all quite important to your success. The formers help build all your map improvements. These include roads so you can move around faster, and being able to place farms on empty squares to make them useful. They can also build something to make better use of the resources that are there, but they can also terraform the planet by raising and lowering the land or redirecting rivers. And there's a complex environmental system running in the background that will try and take all of this into account, so it will actually have an effect on the weather. But you aren't the only thing that can affect the environment, as random events also take place. This might be as useful as increasing the amount of energy that you can produce, or devastating the crops in a base. That can obviously lead to starvation. But there's also the ones that can lead the local wildlife to spawn faster and be more aggressive, which is never fun in those early parts of the game. Formers, like most of the units in the game, can be directly controlled, or you can automate them if you don't like to micromanage. And what you pick depends on the current size of your territory and how many bases you have, as you might want to connect everything up with roads, but getting them to only improve that newly built base can be quite useful. as you really do want more bases so you can have a larger production base when one of those factions that really doesn't like you decides that planets isn't big enough for the two of you.
Combat.
The UN Unity launched as what can be seen as the science win of the previous Civilization games. And while on their way to Alpha Centauri, a reactor malfunction woke up the colonists early. And this also made communications back to Earth impossible. So natural leaders started to show up and to take control of the situation. And they proceeded to form groups along ideological lines. And then when the Unity limped to its destination, these groups went their own ways, taking all those grudges and fights along with them. We have Gaia's stepdaughters, led by the Lady Deirdre Sky.
In the Great Commons at Gaia's Landing, we have a tall and particularly beautiful stand of white pine, planted at the time of the first colonies. It represents our promise to the people, and to planet itself, never to repeat the tragedy of Earth. Lady Deirdre Sky, Planet Dreams.
These are the nature lovers who believe in living with planet. And they get bonuses involved with working with the planet and its local life forms. But being the live and let love hippies, they tend to suffer a bit when it comes to military. The Human Hive. Controlled by Chairman Chenji Zhang.
Learn to overcome the crass demands of flesh and bone, for they warp the matrix through which we perceive the world. Extend your awareness outward, beyond the self of body, to embrace the self of group and the self of humanity. The goals of the group and the greater race are transcendent, and to embrace them is to achieve enlightenment. Chairman Shen Jiyang, SS on Mind and Matter.
A group that believes the whole is more important than the individual, and expect loyalty to the faction and their technology above all else. And thus they tend to grow faster and have higher industrial output, but they don't tend to have much of an economy. The University of Planet, overseen by Proctor Zarkov.
The substructure of the universe regresses infinitely toward smaller and smaller components. Behind atoms we find electrons, and behind electrons quarks. Each layer unraveled reveals new secrets, but also new mysteries. Academician Prokhor Zakharov, for I have tasted the fruit.
These believe research and learning is the most important thing, and as you might expect they have bonuses related to researching so you can get new tech faster. And you even start off with some pretty decent items already unlocked from the start. But their ideals that Data wants to be free can be abused by the other players. Morgan Industries, obviously run by Nobudike Morgan.
Human behavior is economic behavior. The particulars may vary, but competition for limited resources remains a constant. Need as well as greed have followed us to the stars, and the rewards of wealth still await those wise enough to recognize this deep thrumming of our common pulse. CEO Nwabuduke Morgan, the Centauri Monopoly.
These are the capitalists of the game, so money is king and exploiting planet for its wealth is the goal. So starting with more energy credits and gaining bonuses from trade are their main perks. But things tend to cost a little bit more, and so it can be expensive to expand quickly or to have a large army. The Spartan Federation, commanded by Colonel Corazon Santiago.
Superior training and superior weaponry have, when taken together, a geometric effect on overall military strength. Well-trained, well-equipped troops can stand up to many more times their lesser brethren than linear arithmetic would seem to indicate. Spartan Battle Manual.
These are the military faction, based on their namesake. These units are well trained, and being weapon experts, they don't need to prototype units first. And not only that, but they also get some military research to start with, as well as a vehicle. But their industrial output isn't the best, and they tend to have a few issues with generating credits. Lord's Believers, who are ministered by the Sister Miriam Godwinson.
The righteous need not cower before the drumbeat of human progress. Though the song of yesterday fades into the challenge of tomorrow, God still watches and judges us. Evil lurks in the data links as it lurked in the streets of yesteryear. But it was never the streets that were evil. Sister Miriam Godwinson, The Blessed Struggle.
These are the religious sect, and by believing in something higher than themselves, they get some attacking bonuses, and tend to be quite difficult to brainwash. But this comes at a distrust of tech and research, so those do tend to lag behind. And finally, there's the Peacekeeping Forces, organised by Pravin Lyle.
As the Americans learned so painfully in Earth's final century, free flow of information is the only safeguard against tyranny. The once chained people whose leaders at last lose their grip on information flow will soon burst with freedom and vitality. Beware of he who would deny you access to information, for in his heart he dreams himself your master. Commissioner Pravin Lal, UN Declaration of Rights.
Who are basically what is left of that original UN ideals that sent the Unity into space. They gain bonuses for research and growth, but the bureaucracy can make things run a little bit slower than you might like. They also get the perk of having double the votes in some of the important council meetings. And talking of the council, when all the factions know each other, a vote can take place for who should lead the global council. Each faction gets a number of votes based on the number of citizens that they have. And being in charge of the council allows you to put resolutions up for vote, as well as getting a few extra trade bonuses. The resolutions can be as simple as salvaging the Unity's reactor, which will give everyone some extra credits, or it can be planet changing by raising or lowering the water level. And you should always be worried when a faction wants to remove atrocities, which are actions that basically turns everyone against the faction that commits them. Now this might be using some banned tech against your own citizens to make them less likely to riot, or using something like nerve gas in attacks. Or there's the atrocity to end all atrocities, using the Planet Buster missile. This is the Alpha Centauri version of a nuke, and when fully upgraded, it is planet reshaping. This doesn't tend to go down all that well with planets, or as it likes to call itself, Chiron. As it turns out, this isn't a simple planet. It's alive, and it doesn't like having its face explosively reshaped. And this is all learned as the game progresses, via these little text interludes. The various actions that you can take that aren't just limited to using those planet busters can make Chiron and the local wildlife friendlier or more aggressive against you. And this even forms part of one of the endings, as the research victory has mankind becoming one with Chiron and joining the planet-sized intelligence. Others including winning by removing all the other factions, or at least having them surrender to you. But you can also win by having so much energy credits that you can corner the market. This one can be a little hard to achieve, as you have to trigger it and then wait a number of turns for the outcome. There's also the diplomatic ending, in which you have enough votes on the council to unite everyone behind your leadership. But if a faction outright rejects you as the new leader, then you'll have to take them out before you can win. There's all this, and I don't think I've come close to covering everything in this game, as there's parts that I don't tend to mess around with too much, like the trade system, where you can trade with other factions to generate credits, or you can even help out your own base by trading excess amount of resources with one another. which is great when you have those unexpected events happen. There's also this probe team that can steal tech or mess up bases. I tend to be a bit more overt with my aggressive with other factions than trying to be all sneaky, so they're not something I use all that much. And there's also the social engineering. This is where you can mold your faction to what you want it to be, within some limitations of the faction itself. Like you can set the type of government, what core values, or even what societal choices you want to take place. Each of these come with positives and negatives, with none really being perfect. So you can use them to try and balance out the negatives of your faction, or double down and try and boost the positives. And then there are the secret projects, which are a little bit like wonders. These can grant some big bonuses, like protection against the probe teams, or even being able to move around faster across the alien wildlife. And just when you think you've figured everything out and you've got a handle on it all, along came the expansion Alien Crossfire, which shook up the game with 5 new human factions and 2 alien ones.
Risks of flowering considerable, but rewards of godhood who can measure? Usurper Judamon.
And this also has its own story to tell, which goes on to far more detail on how Chiron came to be. And unsurprisingly, it has something to do with those 2 alien races that have arrived. And being unable to talk their language also reduces the diplomatic element when you're dealing with them. As while you can tell what the other human races want when they contact you, with them, not so much. But the rest of the factions will be as chatty as ever, between asking to trade technologies to begging for money, or if you get on the wrong side of them, it can also lead to war. The aliens also have the advantage of not doing blind research. As for the rest of the races, you have to select a combination of the areas that you want to research, and then, after a few turns, something new will unlock. You don't get to select what it is from the tech tree though. You just have to hope you get the one you want. It really is something that adds to the unpredictable nature of this game. Well, that is unless you play as one of the alien races, of course. Something that I've always enjoyed was when you actually get a new bit of research, there's this little line that's read by one of the factions.
Resources exist to be consumed, and consumed they will be, if not by this generation, then by some future. By what right does this forgotten future seek to deny us our birthright? None, I say. Let us take what is ours, chew and eat our fill. CEO Nwabude K. Morgan, The Ethics of Greed.
On top of the new factions, there was also new research, weapons and projects for you as well. So it's actually a pretty decent expansion pack and well worth having. And if you get the game from GOG, it'll actually come with the original and the expansion, so you can select which one you want to play. It also came with an editor, so you can make up your own factions as well. This was a landmark game when it launched, due to it bringing along so many new elements and concepts to the genre that we actually take for granted now. And I think it's safe to say that that box didn't lie, as I've been playing this for over 20 years, and each game has been different and fun, with me learning something new or trying a different approach with most games. I think it's fair to say I'm a big fan of this game, and if you enjoy the genre then you should check it out. And until next time, I've been the Goldfish, that's been...
Please don't go. The drones need you. They look up to you.
And this has been Goldfish on Games. Thank you for watching my video. I do hope you enjoyed it, and if you did, you can let me know down in the comments, or you can use those buttons just below. You know the ones I mean. Or if you're not sure yet, then you can check out 2 other videos that I've done that are on the screen right now. So thank you again, and I hope to see you soon.